So I welcome you to Science of Statistics, University of Ibadan. This is an epoch seminar, ably dubbed special seminar. Indeed, it's a special seminar at a special month, a special week. Without wasting time, I want to quickly do a quick introduction. We have Professor Béatrice Touchelay, all the way from the University of Lille, France. Can we please do a round of applause for her? Also in our midst, we have Professor Olawale Kola, all the way from the Department of Economics, University of Ibadan. And also we have in our midst our own, one of the fathers of the department, Professor Olusoya E. Olubusoye. Round of applause. I want to believe Professor Bach Maria will be joining online. Okay, so I'm informed that Professor Bach Maria is online from the University of Lausanne, Switzerland. So can we please do a round of applause for her? I also want to believe that Professor DG Naisa is also with us online. Professor Antonia Aye Simbai Simbini. I'm informed that we have representatives of DG NISA, Professor Antonia Aye Simbini. We have representatives of the DG here. So please, if you are representing the DG, please can we meet you? Okay, please a round of applause for them. Your names? Patrick and Sahil. Sahil. So you are welcome. Also, we have the great minds of the Department of Statistics, University of Ibadan. Ably seated. Permit me to start from Dr. O.S. Yaya. Okay. Sorry for that. I've been informed that Professor Olutayo Adesina, HOD Department of History, University of Ibadan, is also with us on a round of applause.
For my HOD.
Okay, former. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for that. So before I did that, I was trying to recognize the great minds of the Department of Statistics, University of Ibadan. So I started with Dr. O.S. Yaya. Also, we have the Director of ICT, Department of Statistics, University of Ibadan. Ably seated. Please join me to appreciate the presence of Dr. Samuel Oluwafemi Oyamaki, the Director of ICT, Department of Statistics, University of Ibadan. Also, we have in our midst Dr. Adeniro Tajudeen. You are welcome. Also, we have in our midst Dr. Tayo Ogundumade. Also, we have in our midst Dr. Lekon Akintonde. We also have a friend of the department, all the way from Okumosho in Oyo State, from Lautech. She is Dr. Adesina. Welcome, ma'am. I know we have some of our master students here. So master student, University of Ibadan, please, can you stand up for recognition? Master students, University of Ibadan, Department of Statistics. I learned some of them are still on their way. Also, we have the ASOM president with his executive team. So, ASOM president, please, you and your team, can you please stand up for recognition? Please, let's appreciate them. So, permit me to also tell this gathering that I am Oyede Joshua-Le, the present head of department, University of Ibadan. So I welcome us to this gathering. Like I said, it's a special gathering on a special time, an auspicious time in the Department of Statistics. To the best of my knowledge, this is going to be the first time such is happening. So we thank God for this opportunity, and I want to believe this will be the beginning. So while that intro was going on, we have some of our students too. We have students from Lisa also coming in. So please, can you stand up for recognition? Lisa, reps, please, let's appreciate them. So without wasting time, why are we here? The theme for this gathering, this afternoon gathering, is what counting means, the production of statistical and accounting figures, issues, contributions, and limits. So for this discussion, we have the panel of speakers. Each one of them will be taking turns to answer questions related to the theme. So once again, I want to introduce the speakers one after the other. So let me start from our friend all the way from University of Lee, Beatrice. So please join me once again to appreciate the presence of Professor Beatrice Touchelay. So she's one of the speakers to discuss this afternoon's theme. Also, we have Professor Lawali Okunkola. Welcome, sir. He is also one of the speakers for this afternoon's discussion. Also, we have Professor Olusoya Elisa Olubusoye. He is also one of the speakers for this afternoon's discussion. Also online, we have Professor Olutayo Adeshina, and also we have Professor Maria Bach. I wouldn't know whether Professor Antonia is with us online. So I will also join the speakers to take turns as the event unfolds. So permit me to just say this as the program commences. Just a short intro to what we have this afternoon. We all appreciate that counting is part and parcel of our lives. Even this morning, even this afternoon, many of us have counted one way or the other. Counting makes significant contribution to various fields by providing valuable information for decision-making, forecasting, planning, and evaluation. In statistics, counting helps researchers and analysts draw inferences, identify patterns, and test hypotheses based on numerical evidences. In accounting, counting aids in financial reporting, budgeting, auditing, and compliance with regulatory requirements. So therefore, it is essential to count, having quantitative analysis in mind, as well as critical thinking to be able to handle various complexities involved in counting as it affects decision making. So from this intro, you can agree that this topic is essential, to us as researchers to us in the academia and to those who are not in the immediate academia. So without wasting time, I want to bring on board Professor Beatrice to add the color and beauty to this afternoon's gathering. I would please appreciate that. You're welcome.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Just a very brief presentation. I'm not statistician. It's a bad beginning. I'm not economist. I'm historian. And as historian, I work on statistics and accounting. So I do that in Lille, France. And I do that since a very long time ago because I did a PhD on INSEE, the National Office of Statistics in France. You know INSEE, it is a little like nicer here, like the same, but so it is the producer of statistics in France, of public official statistics. And after I do another diploma on statistics and accounting figures. And I wanted to know what are the impacts of statistics of figures on French society during the contemporary period. Well, that's all. Thanks to be there, I think the debate will be very rich because it is always a pleasure to speak with statistician people. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Beatrice. You're welcome for that beautiful addition. Well, the beauty of this gathering is that it's not rigid in any way. It's very flexible. And that is why we don't want to also belabor the speakers by asking them to follow too much rigid protocols. So because of that, I want to invite Professor Olawale Bukola to please contribute to the discussion. So please join me to welcome Professor Olawale Bukola. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Beatrice, it's nice to see you again and to welcome you. We discussed about a year ago or so. 2 years.
It was yesterday.
Yes. Again, I can see your passion about the issue of data, counting, statistics, and so on. And then, speaking here today, when I was preparing for this, I remember that in 1998, we worked on data for economic analysis. And interestingly, this is the outcome of that study. It was sponsored by the African Economic Research Consortium, and it's titled Improving African Economic Statistics. And 3 of us actually work on this. The lead author is one of the fathers of this department. That's Professor S.O. Adamu. I work with him with Professor Ajiferuke, who is somewhere in Canada now. I was in economics. So, of course, I went to my shelf. I was able to get this copy. And I browsed through. And I can see that, yes, we've done a lot terms of looking at data count in economic analysis. We noted that in economics, we normally focus on two broad issues. I won't spend too much time on that. And that's the micro perspective and the macro aspect of it. But they are interrelated. It is true that you can study micro without touching macro at all. But hardly can you get statistics or data on macro without going through micro. Let me explain this. I want to calculate the gross domestic product or national income of Nigeria. Definitely, I should have an idea of income of individual people, businesses, organizations within that system. So, a way of estimating, a way of doing survey, a way of drawing my sampling will definitely involve the issue of counting and our own understanding of the structure. So this data is made is micro and macro. But we focus more on macro in many ways. And I think one of the reasons is because even at the United Nations level, there is a department for statistics and data. And this department provides a frame which all the countries in the world are enjoying to adapt in organizing their data for many reasons. By the way, why do we use data or counting in economics? Again, it's not different from what the HOD has mentioned, but let me repeat. One is for us to be able to measure performance. In other words, we want to know whether this country performed better this year than last year. Comparative analysis. We want to be sure which sector is contributing more than the other sector to the economy. We want to be able to compare the performance of Nigeria with other countries. Even within the country, we can do what we call a regional analysis. One issue, for example, is the issue of, I know all of you know this, exchange rates. If you don't know it as exchange rates, when you want to buy something in the market, and somebody is saying, no, it's no longer 500, it's now 1,000. I say, why? Dollar don't cost. Meaning that it's linked to exchange rates. Inflation is another one. Why do we want to measure inflation? There are many reasons, 1,001 reasons. Because we are talking about the value of money. It is true that I have 1 million naira today. Clap for me now, I have 1 million. But my 1 million naira, if you are to compare it to my 1 million naira in 2020, the value is not the same. Am I communicating? Yes. Though numerically you say it's 1 million, 1 million. But in terms of value, we are not talking about the same. Again, in economics, we call it purchasing power parity. And some people that suffer from that kind of what we call, I want to remember the correct word for it. This comparison where compare apple with orange. In any case, are suffering from what we call illusion. It is not the same, and that is the reason why accounting you should also be conscious of exactly the message you are passing across. And it is usually good to say as social true. And that's even what we do more in accounting figures. For example, if you take any audited report, if you read the title, the auditor will say the audited financial report of so as at this date. In other words, the second day he may not be able to say the same thing on that account. So element of timing, element of definition, what exactly do we mean, is very important in the issue of counting. So generally, when you look at system of national accounts, what is produced by Federal Office of Statistics, or they are now National Bureau of Statistics, the structure itself try to conform with the UN SNA, United Nations System of National Accounts. And it has so many components, including the production component, including the asset component, including institutional components, and so on. And the reason why we normally want any national data to be structured in such a way is for international comparison. And you will notice some of these things also. In some cases, if you are looking for data on issues like national income, GDP, and you want to do cross-country analysis, the best way is to go for international data source. But such international data source is not independent of the national data point. And that's why in some cases, you are, let's say you are using UN data or you are using World Bank data, and you discover that there are some countries that are not in that data. And the reason may be very simple. Usually they will request for the data from the national office. And if the data is not supplied, they will not put it there. But even putting it in that World Bank or UN statistics, they also cross-check. They also try to look at the base and compare with what was before they can publish it. One data that is creating issue, I don't know if the department will help us. Currently, there are arguments about the position of Nigeria in Africa. Some of us believe that we are still number one. Some say we are number two. And I think about 2 or 3 days ago, we said we are 4 in Africa. Why do we have this? Because people use different bases to do this. But it is only Nigeria that can say, okay, this is the data, and everybody will have to look at it. It is also important for security reasons to use the data supplied by the national office for many reasons. We notice in most cases, if you are looking, this is 2024, right? Is it possible to get data for 2023? I mean, macro data from almost all the variables. Is it possible? Not likely. Again, the issue of production, storage, and retrieval of this information. If you are close to the National Bureau of Statistics, you are likely to have the data. But again, it still needs to be checked, cross-checked before releasing to the public. And whereas in other clients, you can even get 2024 data. We are in March. Yes, you can get even January, February. Let me come home in terms of my area of specialization, and that has to do with trade data. Trade data is an administrative data, but is fraught with so many problems. Problems in many dimensions. The normal errors in recording or so, the method of collecting the data, the classification of the products we are talking about. Let me say this, for example. There is this harmonized system of classification of trade data. And I know there are different versions. There is 2020, and so on and so forth. If Nigeria is using, let's say, 2020 version, and your trading partner is still using 2007, then it may be difficult for you to relate the data. Because what is classified as food here may not necessarily be the same thing that is classified as food on the other side. So before you can compare, you need to be sure of the version and possibly do what we call concordance. In other words, we try to reconcile. This is one of the things where African Continental Free Trade Area is trying to address. Is to say, yes, we've agreed to come together, but let us also harmonize the instrument of data collection. So apart from the issue of different classification, trade data is also fraught with a problem, and that problem has to do with what we generally call illegal or unrecorded transborder trade. Over invoices, under invoices. And why should people do that? There are many reasons. Apart from the one that is purely criminal. In other words, you want to sell the good out, but you want to use the proceeds to import arms and ammunition. Am I communicating? That one is purely criminal. The other one is to run away from paying the correct duties or tariffs on them. For those of you who are familiar with trade data, cocoa beans is under 1800 or 1 or so, I can't remember. Cocoa powder, cocoa paste, they are under different. Because we want to promote industrialization, which is legitimate. We don't say if you want to export cocoa beans, you will pay as high as 40%. But if you are exporting cocoa paste or chocolate, you pay 0 duty. So for those who are trading, there is an incentive for them to declare cocoa beans as chocolate. Am I communicating? So it then becomes a problem. Here in your paper, as the product is leaving Nigeria, is chocolate. It's 0 duty. As it's entering France, is cocoa beans. And that's why when you are using trade data, I beg of you, make sure you compare the origin and the destination carefully, so that you will be talking about the same figure. By the way, even where they are recorded correctly. Cocoa beans, fine. The same classification, no problem of classification. The amount recorded from the source is likely to be different from the amount recorded at the end. And why do we have that? There are other costs, intermediate costs like cost of insurance and freight. Doing analysis with that is not a big problem. There is an assumption that such cost cannot be more than 10% of the cost. So we use mirror data in some cases to fill in the gap, but we adjust some of these things for cost of insurance and freight. In terms of macroeconomic modeling, which we do, it is important before you use any data to do descriptive analysis of the data, of the variables. I usually insist from my students that all the variables you are going to use, do one check for me, and that check is correlation analysis. Why am I interested in correlation analysis? Is to ensure that two variables, either dependent or the other one, are not highly correlated. If they are correlated, they cannot be in the same equation for whatever reason. GDP, gross domestic income, output side, they are almost the same. If you run the correlation, you get 98, something like that. And what that one is saying is that any of them can explain each other. You cannot do that. There is also the issue of definition. When you put an equation, you say you are running it GDP per capita, I have no problem. And in the same equation, you put population. Hello?
No, sir.
And the original one is GDP. What are you telling us? That's more like tautology. So please, since I know that there are many students here, it is important for you to interrogate the data you want to use for your analysis before you do the analysis. Check and be sure that you understand what the producer of that statistic is telling you. Because once you use it, the onus on you to tell us the meaning of what you are doing. Now, let me go to one or two points before I will pause. And the point is very simple. Anytime you have statistics published by MBS or external agencies, they usually have notes and annexes. And I'm pleading with you, please read the notes carefully. For example, when the data was, the national income was rebased, now we have two series. So you can't use the data before the rebase and with the current one, and then say you are doing the same time series analysis. No, it cannot be. So don't take any data as figures. There are stories behind the figures. I normally introduce my class on research methodology in economics with one example, and I believe the women in this assembly will confirm this. There is a theorem or theory in economics, which you all know. I think everybody knows the theory. The higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. But let me also put on that normal condition. A woman went to go to the market and asked, how much is this Congo of pigs? And they say, oh, it is now 1,005. And the last market day, the woman bought it at 1,000. And then she paused. Okay. Initially wanted to buy only 2 and decided to buy 4. What do you think?
Profit maximization.
Eh?
Profit maximization.
No, it's not selling it. Fear of increase in price, we call it rational expectation. Because what the woman is trying to do, to say, oh, this is going to be out of season. And whenever it is off season, the price is usually as high, not as 1,005 that I made it, but it's still likely to go as high as 2,000 or 3,000. So I better buy what I want to buy now. Rational expectation. If you are doing a research on demand for beans at that particular point in time, and you put the price as the last market, compare with the current market, and you look at the quantity demanded, you are likely to violate the economic discount. But if you don't ask questions, if you don't read the note attached to it, you will be saying that, no, this is wrong. So data is to help us. It's not to ride us. There is nothing wrong in you adjusting the data with enough evidence and footnotes, especially if there's change in definition. But researchers generally are in a hurry. You just, oh, what's the figure? Put the figure there, we are not the model. No. There's need for us to look at the data closely, to interrogate. There are some things that we've done before, we've written 9 years before, and they confirm, apart from typo error, that sorry, yes, we've corrected it. They've also called us to users' meeting and guiding them that sorry, this definition cannot hold. This is the right definition and so on. So I enjoy us as researchers as we look at data either published or collected by through survey or analysis, to please be sure that we know the story behind the figures we are using. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for that beautiful. Thank you once again, sir. We appreciate that. While Prof was speaking, I noticed and I was really happy because rational expectation was something I also mentioned recently. So thank you, sir, for mentioning the effect of rational expectation in our modeling research work. Also, Prof mentioned the interrogation of data sets before proceeding with our analysis. So please, these 2 points should be noted as we become better researchers from today. So I want to revert back to our speakers online. I've been informed that Professor Bachmaria is waiting to present a paper
our contributions this afternoon. Professor Maria, are you ready? Maria, are you ready? Can we go to? Okay. Maria, are you ready for us?
Now I can turn my mic on. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
So Maria, you are from?
Yes,
Please go
I'd
ahead.
be happy to talk to you about how I come across statistics. Professor Touchelay sent me some questions. I'm not sure whether you wanted me to go through all those questions or whether you wanted me to start with the first one and then we do a round.
You can use your time to
Lasagna.
address the questions. Maybe you spend the next 15 minutes to address all the questions.
No.
So that you discuss, you make your presentation once and
I think you're muted.
so I said your presentation all at once. Did you hear me? Can you hear me now?
I mean, I can just start if you'd like.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've started a project a couple of years ago on the history of national accounting or the history of national accounts. So the idea is to understand how people in the past have counted the size of economies, because that's really what a national account is, right? As complicated as it is to do in practice, it's actually quite a simple idea in the sense that people just want to understand how big an economy is for lots of different reasons. Is it to find out how poor your country is? Is it to find out how progressive your country is? Then as a second step, as you can imagine, it's to better understand what you need to do, how you need to intervene in the economy to make it better, right, for its citizens. Of course, depending on who you talk to, their political leanings, their experience as a human on this planet, they're going to have different ideas about how one should intervene in an economy, of course. So that's quite subjective. Whereas these statistics, right, are often used as these truth statements, right? If we count the size of an economy and we figure out a number, for example, the average income per capita per person, we can figure out truthfully what the economy is like and what it's like for every person. And so this is a bigger part of a bigger project. But one of my case studies is looking at Nigeria in the 1960s. And of course, as you will know much better than I, we're talking about a newly independent nation and trying to kind of recount its economy. So thank you for your comment. I see it there. So I'm gonna treat these separate questions one by one, trying to specifically talk to you about the Nigerian case study that I have, and perhaps I'll bring in some of my other case studies because I look at India and Argentina as well, and a little bit the United States. But I'm looking at a longer history, right? My Indian case study is in the late 19th century, and as I said, my Nigerian is in the 1960s. And what I'm trying to tease out, which has not been done in the literature so far, is to understand how national accounting, how we count the size of our economies elsewhere, right? So not in the United States in the 1930s when national accounts became more standardized and became internationally accepted for certain ways, or certain ways of counting the size of our economy became standardized on the international level. And that's been done already in the research, but not so much the history of national accounts in what we used to call what used to be the colonies, or what we used to call the periphery, or what we call today the global south, and or emerging economies, etc. It's not too, I'm not too not speaking about how we call or we call these countries. It's rather to say, look, I'm trying to look elsewhere. And as Béatrice Touchelay talked about her background, I'm an economist and came into history during my PhD, because I think it's very important to understand the history of how we theorize economics and how we do economics. And I'm, I'm sure she agrees, but it's interesting to have both people from different disciplines, because they'll approach these questions differently. So going then back to this Nigerian case study, there's it's rather obvious to this economist, as well as the other economists that I look at, that finding or counting the size of production, for example, of the economy is necessary in order to understand what state one's economy is at that time, like in that moment. And then, as I said, to understand how to make things better. And my Nigerian case study, as well as my others, we have economists in either colonies or former colonies that are trying to fight for a different view of the world. And so they think that these statistics are going to help them persuade others that they're right and the others are wrong, right? So it's important to understand that the context is obviously conflictual, right? And these the economists that I look at are trying to speak to the world, right? Even though they're talking about their particular context, Nigeria in this case, they're trying to negotiate and talk with the whole world community about how to do national accounts, how to count the size of economies. So that's how I come, when and why do I meet statistics in my research? It's really they're trying to understand how their country is doing and how better to intervene in the economy to make it better, right? And the kind of statistic that I mostly come across is this national account, right? Trying to understand the income per person in an economy in a particular year. Sometimes the economists look at different several years in order to look at the change. And in the case of Nigeria, I look at someone called Pius Okigbu. I'm pronouncing that wrong, I apologize. He was born in 1924. He was an economist. He did his PhD at Northwestern in America. He was actually the first Black student to get a PhD at Northwestern, and came over to the United States through a scholarship at the time that they had for African students. And he wrote a thesis called Capital Formation in a Development Economy that came out that he finished in 1956. He went to lecture at Oxford University in the UK, but eventually he came back to Nigeria after his studies and became an economic advisor to the newly independent government in Nigeria. And in 1962, he publishes an article where he works out the gross domestic product and the gross national product of Nigeria. It's not the first one, right? It is the first one by a Nigerian economist. Before, there had been several attempts by certain British officials or British economists hired by the colonial government to produce, to count the size of the Nigerian economy. And he does a double accounting where he measures output and expenditure. He doesn't have the statistics for income, so he doesn't do that. But that's really the only that's the only thing he doesn't do according to kind of the international standards at the time. And he really does this, as I said, in order to understand the size of better understand rather the size of the Nigerian economy, because he does not believe that the estimates that were done before, especially one done in the 1950s by two people called Preston Stewart, that for him, which he thinks is very wrong, brings in the fine statistics for the informal sector, things like beggars, prostitutes, etc. And he says, look, okay, that sector exists, but so does it in Europe, and everywhere else where they count the size of their economy. So why should we include these figures? Because then our figure cannot be comparable to the rest of the world. And again, remember, right, Nigeria has just become independent, and he wants a number that can be compared to the rest of the world. And he creates a time series, right, from 1950 to 1957. And he wants to then see, right, whether anything's changed. And you can imagine too that that this, and it does actually, his standard actually becomes something that's implemented at least a decade afterwards in Nigeria. So it has a huge impact for Nigerian statistics. And he wants to then also see, what kind of progress can Nigeria make as an independent nation. So you can hear here, he's criticizing figures that have done before. He's partaking in global debates about how to count one's economies, which is rampant in the 1960s, right? It starts much earlier than we think, but it starts at least on the quite substantially in the 1930s, and so by the 1960s we're talking about this quite a bit. And I've mentioned one qualm he has about former estimates. The other one is that he manages to produce his own survey and send out people to collect more data, which he thinks is better, again, will better represent the size of the Nigerian economy. And one of the things that he counts that the former British economists didn't count was peasant investment, right? He thinks that peasants invest quite substantially in their farms, and this should be added to the gross domestic product. And I think you can get a sense of here that here is someone that knows his country well. Yes, he's an elite, of course. He's an elite in the Nigerian context, but he's not an elite on the international level, right? He has much more kind of hands-on experience and hands-on knowledge of course, local languages, etc., but also just having lived in the country much longer than the former economists who had, the preceding economists who had counted the Nigerian economy. Of course, there's a question here about kind of non-representation, and of course, there's always issues. That's why I think this topic is so interesting. Of course, there are difficulties with representing everybody in such a kind of simplified statistics on such a complex thing like the economy, and especially if we take this idea of the informal sector that he didn't want to count, then we're losing a lot of kind of domestic labor that just happens to not be in the formal sector and has been in the informal sector, and then he kind of he falls into this path dependency, which every single country in the world has to deal with, right? This idea that in the 1930s, when they started to write up the international standards for national accounts, they decided not to include the domestic sector, for example, and other sectors, even though there was a way to count it, right? So you can talk about this as being kind of maybe a problem with path dependency, right? Because he's quite clear, Okigbu, that he wants a figure that is comparable to other countries. And if he counts the economy differently than everybody else, well, then that's not possible. I don't want to talk too long. There's just one final thing I want to say. One of the things that comes up, not just in my Nigerian case study, but in my Indian case study too, is that this counting is a real act of emancipation, right? It's a tool to put oneself on the map. Not just in terms of the statistics, but what I'm seeing with my American case study too is to say, look, if we count the economy to actually produce a better figure or better understanding of our economy, then we can actually intervene in the economy to produce development, right? To industrialize, which is the biggest goal of most economists in the 19th, 20th century, right? And because if you understand the needs of your nation, you understand where your production is, you understand where the profitable sectors are, etc., then you can actually produce more progress, right? So there's a real sense of using this counting the size of the economy as an emancipatory tool. Yes, and I will stop there. Thank you so much for listening.
Wow, that's a fantastic contribution from Bash. Thank you very much. We would like to quickly invite Professor Adeshina. Are you still on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
So we want to give you the space to be able to talk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for inviting me for this program, and I am quite privileged to be able to talk to you vis-a-vis the use of statistics and numbers and accounts and figures when it comes to historical scholarship. I'm a historian by training, but I am also an economic historian. The first basic training you have as a historian is in qualitative studies. And arising from that is your attachment to narrativity as a basic approach of that discipline. And that is why we call ourselves in this part of the world people of the liberal arts. And this is because many of us in the liberal arts came into liberal arts because of our dislike for figures. Anything mathematics, anything figure, we didn't want. And so many of us ended up in the liberal arts. But having said that, I in my intellectual career as an economic historian. And as an economic historian, I brought in my approach in qualitative studies to try to understand the ebb and flow of society, of the economy, of production, of exchange. But I saw it didn't quite work because I needed figures and statistics to show the changes and continuity in society. And then, of course, I worked on the indigenous participation in Western Nigerian economy from 1900 to 1970. And I chose three sectors of the Western Nigerian economy: agriculture, commerce, and industry. But in my attempt to try to understand production and exchange, and of course, trade and industry, I had to depend so much on statistics produced by others, most especially the Ministry of Trade and Industries. I had to depend on the blue books of the colonial period. And of course, I had to depend on secondary materials from economists, as well as agricultural economists. And that took me so much into the figures of exchange, into the figures of production, to the extent that when it was time for my examination, one question that the external examiner asked threw me off balance. And he asked, "We have seen your figures, we have seen the statistics, now where are the people? Where are the people?"
Oh, where are you?
Hello, Prof. Are you still with us? Hello, Dr. Maria. Can you hear us? Hello, can you still hear us, please? From the side. Dr. Maria, can you hear us from here? Okay, you can't hear us. Hello?
You are still audible, sir. I can hear you, sir. You are audible.
Oh, okay. So
Yes, sir.
obviously, was a professor that's not hearing us again. So, can we move to the next while we wait for him?
Just let me quickly
It's back.
do some quick intro. Why? Okay, Prof is back. Hello, Prof. Are you on? Hello,
Yes,
Prof.
yes, sorry about that.
Okay, okay.
Hello.
Continue, sir.
Yes. This had to do with the internet. I apologize. So, and that's why I have now decided to speak on history, historiography, and the basic end of statistics and accounts. I'm talking about the basic ends because at the end of the day, we really do not generate many of the statistics that we use. We adopt statistics already produced, as well as accounts and figures already in existence to try to understand the movement in society. Well, we have been using this for trade, for production, for industries, even for macro and microeconomic developments that allows us to actually try to understand society as well as production. But basically, our dependence on these figures also depends so much on our capacity to analyze these facts and figures based on the level of society. But at times we do trenchant critiques of these figures because of what in history we call triangulation. When you triangulate, you discover that some of the figures you have could not have been possible in specific periods because of certain conditions. And so ever since Wolfgang Stolper produced his work, Planning Without Facts, we began to also see how at times some of the materials being used in research are flawed. This becomes more worrisome when you look at the figures produced by the population census in Nigeria. If you are a social and economic historian and you are looking at studying population growth or movement in society, then you begin to have second doubts in using some of these figures. Most especially that in Nigeria, population figure is politicized. And so, despite that, I've continued to use these materials, and we have depended to a large extent, as I've said, on the Federal Office of Statistics, on secondary materials from economics, from agriculture, even statisticians themselves. But as historians, especially historians of Africa, we at times have these doubts about the credibilities of these figures, and so we subject them to further analysis, and these have continued to influence the way we do history in this part of the world. I'm not saying that these figures are totally useless, no, but as social and economic historians, we have learned to use these figures and materials more carefully than those who even produce these figures. This is because as historians, we have been trained to take a second and third look at these figures, triangulate and confront the other sources and other figures that will enable us to understand the trajectory of society in this age. But since the global age has come, and that people are now becoming more conversant with producing their own figures, and then analyzing their own figures, younger historians are now trying to go into econometrics to see how it can be interfaced with historical studies. But for some of us older people, we still prefer to use the end products of other sources, of other disciplines that will help us to critically analyze what we are working on. But in the next few years ahead, I am seeing a more robust approach between historians and statisticians and economists and agriculturists in ensuring that there is a better understanding of the trajectory of society. And so epistemologies are going to change in the next couple of years, but right now they have remained much of the same. We are trying to also see how we can generate materials, but such materials are still problematic because we do not have the training to actually create those statistics, and then we don't want a situation in which our analysis will be faulted because of extremely faulty data and statistics coming from our own productions. So for a long time, we will still depend to a large extent on statistics and accounts produced by others to ensure that our works get the robustness that they deserve in this day and age. Thank you very much for your attention.
I don't know.
So, Prof, thank you for that handsome contribution from
Thank
your end. We are grateful because you have made us to appreciate counting, not necessarily within the confines of statistics. So while the contribution was ongoing, we have one of pillar minds in the department, Dr. C.J. Odumboso. He joined us. Please, a round of applause for him. Also, another brilliant mind, Dr. Ogunde, also joined us. Please, a round of applause for him. So, briefly, I want to quickly call on Mr. Patrick Rep, DG NISA, Professor Antonio Ataye, for a short remark. Okay, please, a round of applause. Let's appreciate it, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Sahil Jaya. Me and my colleague, Mr. Patrick, we are here on behalf of NISA's and PG, Professor Tayi Odumboso. Actually, we didn't prepare to speak, but from the conversation so far, I think we can say some things based on our own experience from NISA and given the kind of research we engage. So it's about counting, statistics, figure, data collection, and these are a fundamental aspect of what we're doing at NISA. NISA basically means the Nigeria Institute of Social and Economic Research. So every year we engage in individual research projects and team research projects. And then I noticed that some of the previous speaker has spoken on some of the challenges of using statistics for research and all that. And one of the very big challenges that we face at NICE, especially when we are going for institutional study, going to study other agencies, government agencies, is that the problem of data collection. In Nigeria, we have a very poor record keeping culture. We don't keep data, we don't do proper recording. And then when we go to the field to collect data, you see that most of these agents don't even or keep record of their own activities. An example is last year, we did a work on intergovernmental relations. We were asked to go to different states. Now, at the subnational level, we asked to go to different states, and me and a colleague of mine, we went to Lagos State. We got there and we needed data on intergovernmental relations. So how many meetings do they have with federal government and agencies of federal government? What kind of infrastructure are they building together and all those stuff. And what we find out is that one, they don't have most of this data. Two, if they do, they are always scared of sharing this data. So for like 3 weeks, we were going into different offices trying to get them to give us these figures. And then what we find out is that one of the officials called us and spoke to us and said, the problem is that we won't be able to get data. And the fear they have is that they think we are journalists, that we are just using NISA as a camouflage, that we're trying to extract some data from Lagos State government and their rights are prepared or like a newspaper article, just trying to like criticize Lagos State government and all that. And then from these, we recognize that the problem of the culture of poor record keeping could be as a result of trying to like undermine transparency in a way to ensure that there's no accountability. I mean, you don't keep record of what you are doing. If someone says, oh, let's investigate, let's audit, what are they going to work with? And it also comes with the idea of secrecy. Working in secrecy is easy to engage in corruption that way, to manipulate figures, to abuse office, and to do all sorts of unethical behavior. So another experience I would like to share is a study which is very heavy on conflicting data. Actually, it's a cost of governance study at the subnational level. And again, the problem of secrecy, the problem of the data not being available for us to work with. We went to different states. We needed, how many special assistants these governors have? How much are they being paid? And all those stuff. And then the elements in the room also, the security votes. Nobody knows how much governors get for security votes. And then problem of even their personnel expenditure, ride costs and all that. They are not easily available. A lot of these subnational governments have their websites. You can access their documents, their budgets, and all that. But the problem is we found out that about only 12 out of the 6 states, about only 12 states have up-to-date data regarding their budgets, their expenditure, their revenue, and all that. And even only few of them do release financial statements for the year. So these are a really bad practice. And these are some of the challenges that we face when it comes to collecting data and working with data at NISA. But we hope that we have a government or there's a policy, or maybe there's a policy out there that someone can implement at both the federal level and subnational level, because it's very important. We focus too much on the federal level, we focus too much on the presidency, but what's happening on the states, at the state level, is also very important, because at the end of the day, states mainly are the aggregates of what is obtainable at the national level. So I think I will stop there. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Grateful. So I will just come in and make one or two contributions before I invite Professor Iyolu to take the floor, and also had the contribution to what we have been doing. I will quickly focus on an aspect on the main theme of counting, and that is interpretation of figures. I mean, these statistics, how to interpret them. Just like Prof. earlier said, Professor Kutola mentioned that descriptive statistics are very important, and that of interest to him always is correlation figures. So now, an issue under the global theme of counting is the issue of interpretation of what the figures, these statistical figures, how do we interpret them so that we can optimize the information embedded in them. Now, I identified about 7 areas that we need to focus on for us to be able to do good justice to correct interpretation of statistical figures. One is context and scope. The other one is sampling and representativeness. I'm sure Dr. Adeniran will be very interested in that. Another one, just like Prof said, has to do with correlation versus causation. And also, what I have here is confounding variables. And also, I have statistical significance. And also, I have data quality and assumptions. Also, I have misinterpretation and misrepresentation. Now, the summary of what I have here is that correct interpretation of statistical figures must consider these 5-7 elements, for it to be optimal, vis-a-vis not misleading the end users, and also if policy making is tied to this interpretation, those who are meant to do the policy implementation will not also be confused in the course of implementation. So as I take my seats, let us remember the context and scope embedded in the statistical figures are very important. Then the issue of sampling and representativeness must not be played down. Also, the issue of correlation vis-a-vis causation is also very important. And then the issue of confounding variables too must be taken into consideration. And then on statistical significance too, maybe I will come back to that while I round off with this short contribution. Also, data quality and assumption, very important, and also misinterpretation versus misrepresentation. While we were younger, there used to be this funny remark, and honestly, it's an abuse of figures. Somebody was reporting the scene of an accident, and the person said, "Hausa kan, ati èèyàn mẹ́ta ló kú." Yes, somebody was reporting the scene of an accident and said, one Hausa man and 3 people died. one Hausa man and 3 people died. Now the issue is the Hausa man. Is it not a human being? You know, so as simple as that joke is, if we are not careful with statistical figures, we could misinterpret the statistical figures. And that is why the meeting of the gown and the town very important, so that experts who have a good understanding of the nitty-gritty of what the statistical figures are saying, you know, could advise the governments accordingly. As the production is concerned, and also the end uses of these statistics are also concerned. So that is my short contribution. So without wasting time, I want to bring on board Professor O.E. Olubusore for his fatherly contribution.
Once again, I want to thank everybody, both those physically present and those who are joining us virtually. I cannot give my talk without first appreciating Professor Béatrice Touchelay for arranging this seminar. It's quite it's a real privilege for us to collaborate. I've been collaborating, working with the economists. I've worked with Professor Ogunkola as a junior fellow at SIA. I've quite a lot of other economists. But now we are working with historians, including Professor Adeshina. Interestingly, when I define data, I simply define it as history in figures. So that tells us that there's a connection between data and history. If when you write history in narrative way, excellent, but data itself is the history in numbers. So the topic we are discussing is quite broad, so interesting. I won't even follow the slide that I've prepared. And most of the issues have been addressed. What counting means, the production of statistical and accounting figures, issues, contributions, and limits. And I want to specifically focus on the Nigeria situation. Quite a lot has been said about Nigeria's situation. But the reality is that first we need to understand data is broad in terms of scope, context, and usage. It's broad. But today, you talk of data in different forms and formats. So text, video, picture, these are now considered as data. But the concern for now is data that are measured, whether you count them or whether you actually measure them. So we are not talking for now of data in video or other formats. Now, in Nigeria, like any other country, every nation has a national statistical system. And the component of the national statistical system includes the producer, the users, the suppliers, those who supply the data, the households, the firms, and so on. And then, of course, the last one is the training institutions like ours. So we develop manpower for the statistical system. Our challenge in Nigeria is quite enormous. The way our statistical system is organized. In other countries, it's completely decentralized. Ours also is decentralized because data are produced at different levels. Local government, although nothing is going on at that level at all, practically no data production. And then if no data production is going on at the local government level, which is supposed to aggregate to the next level, we are supposed to aggregate this might be. Practically no statistical activities are going on at the local government level, whether collecting levies and taxes, whatever movement of people, no statistics is going on at that level. And then at the state level, of course, we are supposed to aggregate the local government information to form the state level information. But when not even going on at the state level, you wonder what is produced at the state level. And then what is produced at the state level is supposed to aggregate to national level. So, but we see information at the national level. We don't know how data have been aggregated from the bottom to the top. It's a major problem. So in terms of data production in Nigeria, our system, we have entities, like National Statistical Office, National Bureau of Statistics, which was established through the Act 2007, Act 2007, yes. So it used to be Federal Office of Statistics. We thought that metamorphosing to the global system will actually change the way data is produced. The improvements have been recorded, but one, our data production is largely driven by donors. Our data production is largely driven, decided, determined, designed, developed, produced by donors. The recent one that was launched last week or so, Nigeria Child Labor Force Survey 2022 was launched last week. Just like Professor Mukola was saying. So we are in 2024, but we are launching a survey data for 20. So how current is that information? And the reason is because the investment in data production, how much is budgeted by government for the production of data in Nigeria? Have you ever seen the budget for NBS? If you are if you have free time, go to the zonal offices of the National Bureau of Statistics. I mean, you will be surprised the level of facilities and equipment for them to be able to do their work. So one, investment in data production is a real challenge. Somebody, my colleague from NISA, talked about culture. So this, we still have this. In fact, there was a time where I got a grant. We partner with the State Ministry of Environment and Water Resources. And then, of course, you know, all departments, all ministries have, they have Department of Planning, Research and Statistics. So we were to work with the PRS department, Planning, Research and Statistics of the Ministry of Environment and Water Resources. There were only 2 staff in that department. One, the director does not have a laptop, so we needed to first of all buy a laptop for her to be able to work from our own grant. Of course, even till today, we can't recover the laptop. And then again, the other staff, she happened, that's not really a big issue, the fact that she doesn't have background. In fact, it was like a punishment for her to be posted as a director to the PRS, because anybody they want to, if they want to favor you, there are other very treaty departments that you'll be posted. But when they want to discipline you, then you will be posted to statistics division. And in that place, there's no money, no, you are just to come show that you are absent and so on. Now, this is, apart from the fact that the capacity, nobody is being trained and retrained in the current state of data production. Nobody is being trained. I mean, in those days when we used to have Federal Office of Statistics, this department used to train, even from economics department, before we became full-fledged department. The universities used to train manpower for the then Federal Office of Statistics, and they provided the fund. Most of the current, even including the current leadership of the National Bureau of Statistics, they all passed through this department. But since that transition from FOS to MBS, it's difficult to know how they build capacity. So one, we are expecting, when we are not even investing to build capacity, not to even talk of collecting the data. With no technology, these days, I mean, we've talked about UN, United Nations Statistics Division. They've organized several trainings which I compelled my students to attend, how you now use telephone to collect data and so on. They are now leveraging on the use of technology to be able to harvest data in real time. So you are able to know what is going on somewhere at the moment. And then your planning is timely, your projection is robust and relevant. Not that you are using outdated, very low quality data sets. These are the challenges. I don't want to deny Beatrice the time to really make a contribution, but it's just good for me to give this global picture of the challenges that our statistical system is facing. So those production agencies, I mean, one issue critical, I've worked with colleagues in the Central Bank of Nigeria, particularly in the research department. Occasions we need to get information, data from sister department. Data sharing is a taboo. Data sharing is a taboo. To share within the same organization, it's the same ministry for account department of a ministry to give information about, they can give you their budget for the year, but they won't give you the releases and the expenditure details. So how do you really have a good picture of government finances? So these are just some of the challenges. I can keep on mentioning them, but I hope We will get there one day, and that's why those of you who are our students or researchers, wherever we find ourselves, very soon or later, in the position of power, data must be the topmost. Somebody was asking me in a function that if I should meet Governor so, what would be my priority? I said, go and invest in data production. How can you manage people without knowing their numbers? How can you manage resources? We know we have natural resources. We know, but we don't know how they are. We just don't. We are blank in terms of the quantum. In terms of even when we know the quantum, how are they now being exploited? I mean, as big as we are, it's difficult to even know how much quantity of PMS that we consume on a daily basis. Till now, we don't even know most our trade data on trade balances. I mean, when one of the ministers was at the National Assembly to defend, or no, I think she was being interviewed for the appointment, or maybe to defend her budget for the year. I mean, she was just literally crying that the first day she came, she asked for data on trade in Nigeria in the ministry. They couldn't provide any data. So this is an issue that I think we will still continue to engage ourselves. Thank you very much. The head of department stepped out, the chair. Maybe I can use, I can stand on his authority to invite Béatrice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, just to conclude, because I think a lot of things have been said, especially Adesina told us, historian, told us that statistics are very difficult are not true. We have to be very, it is difficult to use statistics because we have to have a big méfiance, I don't know méfiance, against statistics. And a lot of the other definition, other parlors, I don't know, told us that we need statistics. We need statistics because we want to organize an election. For example, if you want to organize election, you have to know what is the amount of population, I think. If you want to help people to live in good condition, you have to publish one price index, I think. You have to define some national accounting if you want to know and if you want to decide what will be the production in the future. You have to, you need money. If you want to govern, you need money. In France, till I don't know, the end of the middle of the 20th century in France, governments didn't want to pay for statistics. In France, there were only, I think, 5 statisticians between the Second World War. In 1938, there were 100 people in the central office of statistics. Only 100, maybe 150, but not more. Why? Because government didn't understand the uses and the importance of statistics. So some measures of decisions, of national decision, very important decision when you want to limit the weeks of work. When you say, and there is a lot of salaries people, you say you can't work anymore before more than 14 hours each week. 40, sorry. They decide in 1936 to stop, to limit the work during the week, and it will be 40 hours. But they didn't know at all how many things we can produce in that time. So it was a very bad decision because they limit production, you know. So if we don't have statistics, it is very difficult to count, and it is very difficult to govern. But I work on colonial statistics, and for the colonial statistics in French Empire, it's very different because French say that they have statistics. French count people, count men, women, they count workers, they count production, but they don't count when they can't see. Domestic production, they don't count. Craft production, they don't count, because for French colonisateur, it was not important to know what is the importance, real importance of domestic production, or it is fundamental for the territories they want to colonize. So it is, I think statistics is a question of democracy. If the government do not pay enough for statistics, it's because they don't, maybe it would be because they don't want to count. And if they don't want to count, it is a problem, I think. It was like that in France. Alors, in France, the development of statistics is during the Second World War. It was a non-democratic government. It was Vichy, if you know. It was Pétain, if you know. It was the Shoah, and it was a very policy government. They want to count because in France, during the Second World War, there were no anymore to eat because it is an occupation. So government say we need statistics. We need statistics to propose a good development of statistics with democracy during the 15th year of the 20th century. Voilà. It is what I want to say. I think it is very rich for historians to collaborate with statisticians because we have a lot of things to exchange. And my challenge is to know. My challenge is precisely to put figures, accounting figures, and statistics figures as an object of study. I want to do that. When I say that to historian students, they all go out because historians don't like figures. Because if they do history, it is not to do mathematics. So they tell me, ooh la la, no, bye-bye, statistics, we don't want to hear about that. But I say them, we need to know how statistics are built. We need to know, we need to criticize statistics, and we need, it is an absolutely, it's imperative for historians to know to know how we build demographic statistics. Do we count women? Do we don't count women? It is not the same. And sometimes we don't count women because they can't produce for production ZPD. So voilà. There is a lot of choice because the way to construct to construct statistics. And I want to, it is my challenge, I want to to put statistics, to choose statistics as an object of study. I think it's very important, and to criticize statistics. Yes, so I think it's the end. Initially, we wanted to answer 5 questions. What are the statistics you study? How are they produced, the statistics? What is the career of statistician, and so on? But everybody answer in only presentation. I think it's better, because Adesina and so on, they answer all questions together. It is very, very nice. Many thanks for invitation. Many thanks for the organization of that seminary. And if I come back, I learn English better, speak better. But it is a long time ago. I try to. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Beatrice. So once again, I want to appreciate all the speakers, especially Beatrice, all the way from University of Leeds. We appreciate you. I want to appreciate Professor Oyolubuse for the beautiful announcement presentation. I also want to appreciate Professor Maria Switzerland, University of Lucerne. So we appreciate you. Also, I want to appreciate Professor Obukola in absentia. I also want to appreciate Professor Lutayo Adesina in online. So once again, I want to believe that we have listened to our erudite speakers on what accounting means, the production of statistical and accounting figures, issues, contributions, and limits. With what has happened this afternoon, you will agree with me. Statistics is indeed wide. The application of statistics is indeed very huge. There is no phase that you cannot find an application of statistics. Even in religious studies, you can see the application of statistics. Oftentimes, we see what our experts in that field, what they do, especially those in the traditional sciences, when they make tally marks, you know, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Those are tally marks. The only thing is that the way they do their inference might not be statistical, but the truth of the matter is they are applying one form of statistics or the other. So that is to let us know that statistics is indeed a tool for the past, a tool for the present, and also a tool for the future. So, Professor, how many questions? Can we enter 1 or 2 questions? Okay. So, question time, and please, we are 3. Yes, okay, please, maximum 3 questions. Maximum 3 questions. Can we have those who might be, yes, number 1, number 2, and then the last person? The last person, Dr. Ade, so please come for your question.
Yes.
So please come for your question, your name, then you ask your question. Please go straight to the point. Time is not on our side.
Good afternoon, sir. We appreciate your lectures given to us. We benefit a lot. My question, sir. Based on the topic discussed, the first lecturer talked about using descriptive statistics to know about the data itself. Now, but my own question is, based on analysis that I've done, talk about correlation for time series data, as it gives spurious results. So, and it's now confirming that if you use correlation to know the relationship between 2 time series variables, I think I'm asking, is that still relevant when there is co-integration to know about the relationship between us. Hope the correlation will not give serious regression. Serious result. That's one. And about the data, based on experience with analysis, I've seen that collecting data from different publications in Nigeria, let's say in Nigeria alone, not even talking about World Bank. In Nigeria, we have different publications, maybe like CBN and MBS. Their figures are different, they're not the same. On what basis can we prioritize one? Like the data for an analyst, let's say I want to write a project now. So which basis will I use to use CBN on or MBS on? That's one. And the last one is on the qualitative analysis. That's for the historian. There are some aspects in econometrics, whereby we have controversial findings. So I think making use of qualitative like interview, that is like a contribution, will be very useful to understand better the controversial findings of the researchers in that aspect. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. You remind me as I address each of them. The first one is about the issue of So I don't want you to get the message wrong. I think the bottom line of that presentation is the need for you to interrogate your data before you start any analysis. Most often as researchers, you are not the one that predict data that you are using. So if somebody else or another institution produce the data, for you to use it, you must actually do three things. And I used to explain that to my students. You have to work the way medical doctors, the way they work. Data is your patient. Just like sick people or so, they are the patients of a medical doctor. And the doctor will first of all interrogate the patient and ask questions about the history of that person. We ask questions about the way the patient is feeling. That's the starting point when you are dealing with data. You must ask questions: how was the data generated? What process was used to generate the data? What are the concepts there? How are they defined? So those are critical questions you need to be able to answer. And if necessary, you need to trace or ask some critical questions from the producer before you go on. The second thing the medical doctor will do is to examine the patient by way of checking the blood pressure, by way of checking the temperature, by way of so as a data user, researcher, that's also the second thing you should do to your data. You are supposed to examine the data by way of checking for outliers, by way of checking for correlation that we are talking about, by way of checking for missing observations, by way of checking for errors in the data. So that is the second. You examine, you shine your eyes and look at the data. You don't just use the data as published or as disseminated. The third thing you have to do to your, which or rather what the medical doctor will do, will be to test the patient. All this while, they have not diagnosed the problem. The last thing before they to diagnose the problem. The same way, before you can use the data properly. You have to test the data. Whatever technique you want to use, there are underlying assumptions, normality assumptions, constant variance, whatever. So at the first stage, you now check the data for those assumptions. I think that answers that. So the second, so it's not uncommon, particularly in Nigeria, for you to have data produced by different organizations. But in Nigeria, the Statistics Act actually recognizes the National Bureau of Statistics as the producer of official statistics. So any analysis you are doing and you want to generalize about the entire country, or any international organization that will use data about Nigeria, they cannot just go to any institution and collect. The only source official statistics in Nigeria is the National Bureau of Statistics. But what they do also is to gather data from different ministries to be able to produce their own. Sometimes what they produce will be produced. So you need to check the data. Why it is final in the original source, the provisional with NBS. And that's why what Professor Ogunkola was saying, that you need to read the footnote to be able to know the full state of the data. Is that clear? The third one, contribution. Use of qualitative analysis for, you these days, I told you when I was presenting that now we are in the age of big data, and the concept of big data, one major attribute is the fact that we have variety. Data comes in different forms. In the past, data used to come only in the form of numbers, but now text data are coming. Your WhatsApp, Facebook, messages, videos, they also constitute data that you can analyze. So all these can be applied to in any field, whether econometrics or so on. I mean, the last time I taught master student machine learning techniques, application in econometrics. So we need to step up. There's nothing to worry about. I hope that, yes. Is there any other? Oh, one more question. Maybe the last one, then we will close this session. We have inaugural lecture. So thank you. Your name and...
Good evening, everybody. My name is Falakemi Pariogun. So I want to ask this question on how to safely guard data towards sustainability. Because sometimes I wonder if we would ever be able to get data in its pure form, just as the way it is. So is there a solution to guiding or to guarding data sustainably for an ever transitioning world? So that's my question.
Excellent. The truth is that data will keep on evolving. I mean, data will be evolving from time to time. We will never be saturated with data. So as researchers, data will continue to come in different forms and shapes. And the issue of sustainability or not sustainability might be relevant to the producer of the data, so that the data producer is able to produce the data in real time. Data production in real time is what is most important as far as sustainability is concerned. Not that you produce data with long lag, with many years behind. It's not helpful and most often also not useful. Data producers, they are supposed to be constantly, that's why here you must know in the past, FOS will give you the list of data for this year. At the beginning of the year, you will see all the surveys that they will produce. I don't know if that is still on. So again, sustainability is about having data frame, sample frame that is constantly being updated. Most people have asked, you do national survey of households, but where do we get the updated list of the household from where you draw your samples? Am I in that list? Are you in that? Is the household in that list? So there are what we call data infrastructure, which must be constantly updated. List of industry, if you are to survey industry, which industries should see, if industries have already closed and they are still in your frame. If new industries have come up but they are not in your frame, how do you select? How are we sure your sample, is realistic or useful or not? So those are the perspectives from which you can look at sustainability. Thank you very much.
Once again, thank you, our friend from Human Nutrition. So an extension of what Oga said, I want to believe what you're also talking about has to do with data archiving, isn't it? So just like somebody once said, I think our friend from NISA really said that the culture of secrecy in codes, not allowing organizations and institutions, to be enmeshed in the culture of data collection and keeping for the future. So I think a lot needs to be done vis-a-vis data archiving. There must be a policy, I want to believe, in place that will encourage organizations to archive their data for the future. So without wasting time, I want to bring on Dr. Adeniro for his question. Okay. So with that, it means we are done for this gathering. Once again, I want to appreciate Beatrice, all the way from France, University of Lee. Just like I asked in the morning, I hope you are going to come again to visit us. And then when you do, we are going to hit 3 statistics together. So also I want to appreciate Professor Oye Olumusoye. It has been nice having you around again. We want to appreciate all the reps of DG, NISA, Mr. Patrick, and my other friend. We appreciate your presence. I want to appreciate the presence of all my colleagues, Dr. Yaya, Dr. Oyamaki, our Director, ICT, Dr. Gunde, Dr. Adeniro, Drs. Ogundumade and Akitonde, I want to appreciate the presence of all our master students. Also, I've seen Dr. Oeziaya with Dr. Adeshina. Also, I can see the social director, undergraduate. Actually, Omobolani and her team worked on the design of this. A round of applause for them. So I can see the rep from Lisa. So a round of applause for them as well. Yes, for those who are online, I want to say thank you for staying put with the Department of Statistics, University of Ibadan. So this is the beginning of greater things for this department. So once again, as we go, I bid everyone farewell, safe journey back to our several destinations. Thank you all.